Namaskar, this is Akhilesh Bhargav. Welcome to Tit-Bits on Business and Finance with me. To state the most obvious fact, there is a huge rot in India's banking and financial system, particularly in banks and NBFCs. And this pathetic state of affairs is across the board. It is there in private sector banks, it's there in public sector banks, of course, and it is there certainly in the cooperative banks. We had seen in the past how CEOs like Chanda Kochar messed around with the state of affairs of ICICI Bank, and to a certain extent, so was the case of Shikha Sharma and Axis Bank. It is because of such mismanagement by the CEOs and the top management that the entire system remains crisis ridden. It started with 14 public sector banks going bankrupt. They were put under the PCA regime, the prompt corrective action regime of the RBI, preventing them from doing any business until the RBI nursed them back to health. We then saw the collapse of ILFS like a pack of cards. IDBI Bank then went bankrupt. Thereafter, it was bought by LIC. We also saw huge expose of malpractices at Yes Bank, finally leading to the exit of Rana Kapoor. It was for certain similar reasons that even Chanda Kochar exited from ICICI Bank and Shikha Sharma was nudged out of Axis Bank by the RBI. And then we saw the huge fraud in the PMC Bank, and its hapless depositors are still looking out how to get their deposits back. We saw a crisis-ridden Reliance Capital going belly up. DHFL went bankrupt, Altico went into a mess, and though not directly in the banking industry, we saw Karvi, one of the biggest share broking firms of India, misusing client funds in a huge way. In other words, there is a rot in the system, and it is not fully out in the open, let me tell you that. We are still yet to see the NPAs of the MSME sector and the real estate sector being recognized by banks and financial institutions, and thus there is more of this kind of a mess yet to come out. The entire mess in the system is best symbolized by the over 10 lakh crore of NPAs that have taken place in the system, and they continue. The system went in a mess because of huge political interference and meddling in the functioning of banks. It went in a mess because of poor regulation and supervision by the regulator RBI, and the continued delay in resolution of NPAs by the IBC. Thus, NPAs keep rising, the sector remains in a crisis. There has been a huge loss of public money in the process. In the last 3 years, the government has pumped in over 3.5 lakh crores to recapitalize public sector banks whose capital got eroded because of these kind of giant NPAs. Thus, the entire crisis is not yet over, and you can expect more of collapses of institutions and banks to really take place. If you thought that this kind of a crisis or mismanagement is restricted to the public sector, then you are of course mistaken. The private sector has been no exception. To repeat, we saw what Chanda Kochar did, we also witnessed what Shikha Sharma did at Axis Bank. But the worst of the lot was the case of Rana Kapoor. Rana Kapoor had a career in a number of foreign banks, Bank of America, Citibank, ANZ, Greenlane, Stanchart. He then came to India, got a banking license in 2003, and Yes Bank was started. He has been its 26% shareholder. Of course, at the moment, he holds no share, he has sold it all. But he was a 26% shareholder, and Rabobank was a 20% shareholder. Because of extremely ambitious and aggressive fundraising and wholesale lending, soon the bank became the fourth largest private sector bank in India. As of September 2019, it had deposits of 2.09 lakh crores and advances of 2.34 lakh crores. A sizable balance sheet indeed, and of course, lots of public deposits involved. It was Rana Kapoor's ambition to probably network with Bombay's top circles that we saw him indulge in reckless lending. Thus, in case of most influential and questionable groups and business houses, we see that Yes Bank invariably has an exposure and it has gone bad. Yes Bank thus gave loans to ILFS, it gave loans to DHFL, Jet Airways, SL, the Reliance group led by Anil Ambani, all of whom have inflicted heavy losses on the bank. And while Rana Kapoor was indulging in this kind of regulatory violations and reckless lending, he of course had mute spectators in the board of directors of Yes Bank, headed by Ashok Chawla, a former finance secretary of India, who is also now under a cloud. He is under investigation by the CBI on account of his involvement in the INX media case. Thus, the board of directors just fawned upon Rana Kapoor and he continued his reckless lending and mismanagement of the bank. Even the Reserve Bank of India has been a mute spectator to a certain extent. It was in 2015-16 that it was very clear that the bank has been indulging in huge corporate and regulatory violations. It had been indulging in a lot of reckless lending. There was manipulation of financial statements. This had come to the fore in 2016-17. Reserve Bank did not take any action till in September 2018, it refused to extend the tenure of Rana Kapoor as the CEO of Yes Bank, and he finally exited on 31st January 2019. Thus, Reserve Bank did not take timely action when it was needed to be taken. As a result of these kind of malpractices, mismanagement and misconduct of Rana Kapoor, a huge damage got done. Rating agencies like Moody's and CARE have downgraded their bank, and today it is actually fighting for survival. The bank's financial position is precarious. Liquidity is scarce. There is shortage of capital, losses are rising, NPAs are rising. In its last reported quarterly results for September 2019, it reported losses of 600 crores. And in the financial year 2020, so far, there has been a rise of NPAs in the bank such that about 30,000 crores worth of loans are today questionable. The bank's position being precarious and it being unable to raise any further capital to shore up its finances. In fact, the new CEO of Yes Bank, Ravneet Gill, has been desperately trying to raise capital of about $2 billion, but no investor, whether domestic or foreign, is now willing to invest in the bank. With such a precarious position, in order to protect the depositors' interests, because of the failure of the bank to have come up with any kind of a revival plan, finally, Reserve Bank got in motion. Yesterday, Reserve Bank of India superseded the board of directors of Yes Bank. By doing that, it has put the bank into moratorium. This is the first time we are witnessing a large private sector bank go into moratorium. That means, and the moratorium is for a period of 30 days. That means that within 30 days, the Reserve Bank has promised that they'll come up with some kind of a revival plan for Yes Bank, and that includes some kind of a restructuring or amalgamation of the bank or some fundraising such that it is revived. Reserve Bank rightly says that it is doing this in order to protect depositor interests. During this moratorium period, the bank's board has been superseded. A former CFO of SBI, Prashant Kumar, is now in charge of the bank. There is a complete ban on any kind of lending and fundraising by the bank. No new liabilities can be created. No payments can be made except for paying salary, rent, legal expenses, statutory dues, etc. The RBI has very confidently said that much before 30 days, the 30 days end on 3rd of April, it says that much before 30 days, they would have come with a plan to revive the bank and depositors' interests will be fully taken care of. During these 30 days of moratorium period, if you are a depositor of Yes Bank, you are going to be allowed to withdraw only 50,000 rupees from your account. In case of extraordinary circumstances like medical need or marriage, the withdrawal permitted is up to 5 lakh rupees. Depositor interest has certainly been protected by the Reserve Bank, and that will ensure that there is no panic in the banking system. But then, shareholder interests remain unprotected. In the stock markets today, the share price of Yes Bank fell by about 85% before it recovered to a certain extent. The reality is that shareholders of Yes Bank have seen huge erosion in their wealth. The reality also is that the banking system in India remains crisis-ridden, and that is where comes a number of questions to see the larger picture. The first one, why has the Reserve Bank been slow in taking action? We saw that in the case of Chanda Kochar also. The RBI had given her a clean chit in 2016. No action got taken till she was sacked in 2019. Why does the Reserve Bank of India act so slowly? Why in the case of Yes Bank has the Reserve Bank done what it did today? Why did it not do it in 2017 when it was aware of the scammy state of affairs of Yes Bank, its regulatory failures and reckless lending and hidden NPAs? Why such a delayed action? The second is, there are many more hidden NPAs in the system. MSME NPAs have yet to be recognized. The failures of many enterprises, particularly in the real estate sector, is yet to be recognized, and big ticket NPAs are pending to come. That means there are going to be more failures in the system, and the government has not been able to tackle the NPA crisis despite it saying that the IBC is the solution for it. Thus, the other larger picture is expect more such extraordinary situations in the banking and NBFC sector. The third question that we have is, why does the government act on a piecemeal basis? Why has the government not been able to assess the crisis of the entire sector and come with a sector-wise revival for the entire banking and NBFC industry? Why do we see a situation where the patient is certainly critically ill, but only when some organ fails does the government take action to remedy that organ? Why does the government not take action to cure the patient across the board is our next one. And finally, reports say that Rana Kapoor has already left India. If that be correct, then our question is, why has he been allowed to flee India, and why was no lookout circular for him? Is it that those in the system who were his godfathers continue to be in power in some form or the other? And if that be so, will the government really conduct a detailed investigation on the misdeeds and malpractices of Rana Kapoor and punish him adequately? Is our last question. This is Akhilesh Bhargav signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.
Now be the first to know about the latest updates on our new news app. Go on your Android or iOS, search for HW News Network. Download our app, choose the language you prefer to get updates in, and be up to date with the latest news.